What are the parts we have and the total parts of decimal numbers? We learned that fractions are part-to-whole relationships. Let's look at the part-to-whole relationship in the fraction 2/8. The denominator, 8, represents the total parts of the fraction. The numerator, 2, represents the parts we have. It is also easy to see this relationship in a shape like this circle. We can see that there are 8 total parts. The numerator, 2, represents the parts we have. The part and the whole are easy to see in a fraction because there are 2 distinct numbers in a fraction, the numerator and the denominator. It is not as easy to see the parts we have or the total parts in a decimal number. Look at this number. The 7 tells us we have 7 parts. The last digit is in the tenths place. We have 10 total parts. Let's look at this decimal number. The 50 tells us we have 50 parts. The last digit is in the hundredths place. There are 100 total parts. When we want to find the total parts and parts we have for a decimal number, we listen to the words as we read the number. Let's look at some examples. We'll start with this number. We read this decimal number as 4/10. This tells us we have 4 parts. And there are 10 total parts. The equivalent fraction is 4/10.
I'm going to quiz you.
Here is another decimal number. When we read this number, we say 100th. We have 1 part, and there are 100 total parts. The equivalent fraction is 100th. Let's look at another decimal number. When we read this number, we say 12 hundredths. We have 12 parts, and the hundredths tell us there are 100 total parts. The equivalent fraction is 12 hundredths. Let's look at one more decimal number. We say 2 thousandths when we read this number. We have 2 parts, and there are 1,000 total parts. The equivalent fraction is 2 thousandths. How does the 100 square grid show the part-to-whole relationship? When we are looking at decimal numbers in the tenths or hundredths, we can show the total parts and the parts we have using a 100 square grid. Let's look at this number. We see that there are 8 shaded parts. These are the parts we have. We also know that there are 100 total parts. Now let's look at the decimal number 50 hundredths in the 100 square grid. We see that there are 50 parts shaded and 100 total parts. Let's look at one more decimal number in the 100 square grid. This number is 39 hundredths. We have 39 shaded parts and 100 total parts.